Hey warriors, I hope you're all doing well. So, last month of your preparation strategies, we are very close to your examinations coming up for your CA Inter and CA Final examinations. Today's video is more dedicated to my CA Inter friends who are writing your upcoming examinations for September 2025. We generally have a tendency to always launch something called as a focus strategy and ABC analysis for all of you. So we're going to do the same thing here. Now, this is not going to be a traditional ABC analysis as how you watch it in the YouTube channel. If you've already watched the May 25, you would have a fair understanding of it. What we're going to look at is two things. First, how should we be looking at your exam pattern? And second, focusing on what you should be looking from an exam perspective on the topic wise understanding. Yes. And so to do this properly, what I always do is first give you an insight on what the exam pattern should look like. When it comes to income tax, as you all know, income tax is going to be part of paper number 3A, right? So after you complete your law paper, you will be coming in and writing two papers together. One is called as direct tax, one is called as indirect tax. Indirect tax for 50 marks, you will be given a two split model. Split model will be that you will be first tested on MCQs for about 15 marks and then you will have your descriptive for about 35 marks. Now, descriptive is fairly something which we'll get to, but the MCQs is what I want to look into carefully. When it comes to MCQs, people, at least the last 3 years pattern is like this. ICAI has been basically testing you on two case study questions and then upon that adds you some additional individual questions. Yes. So if I look at the May 25 itself, what basically happened is ICAI gave you two case study questions, each having 3 questions, which means 6 plus 6, 12. Plus you got a one individual case study question for 2 marks, which was on TCS, and then you got one individual question. Yes, that is how the paper pattern came in when it comes to examinations. So what you can expect from ICAI is that you will expect two case study questions and then two individual questions, one being 2 marks and one being 1 mark. That is what the pattern looks like. Or what can ICAI can do is ICAI can give you two case study questions where two case study questions could have 4 each, or they can probably give you one case study question with 4 questions and then one individual question. Anything works, people, but one thing is fairly obvious. ICAI is really paying attention to case study questions. So case study becomes an extremely important thing for you to keep in mind. Moving on forward to something called as descriptive. Now, when it comes to descriptive, you will be given 4 set of questions when it comes to descriptive, and those are given on the screen. The first is going to be your compulsory question, which is going to be having all your total income related adjustments. Here, you'll be not just covering PGBP, you will also be covering heads of incomes like HP, IFOS, Chapter 6A reductions, tax rate computations, DTR, ATR comparisons. All those kind of questions will be part of question number 1. And therefore, this packs a lot of weightage. This question number 1 itself will carry about 14 marks for your examinations. Yes. As regards other 3 questions, you'll be given 3 questions where you have to choose out of 2. 2 individual questions being 10 marks each. Yes, so 10 marks is what you'll be looking at for each question. So this is 15 marks of your compulsory question plus 10 marks for question number 2, 10 marks for question number 3 and 10 marks for question number 4. You can pick off any 2 out of 3, thereby making it 35 marks. Yes, now what does the paper pattern look like? In question number 2, you'll be tested on 2 things. One is called a residential status and one is called a TDS and TCS. Residential status coming for about 6 marks, TDS, TCS coming for about 4 marks. Similarly, when you come to question number 3 has 2 heads of income being tested together, meaning you'll get a salary plus HP question, HP plus IFOS question, PGBP plus CG question, anything can happen for that matter. And then you have point number B, which will be a specific head of income question, which can either be a PGBP specific question, IFOS specific question, or a capital gain specific question. This brings me to question number 4. Question number 4 being a compulsory clubbing and set off question, and the 4B being a theory related question. 6 and 4 accordingly. Yes. So if you notice the paper pattern carefully, total income is going to come for about 15 marks. Your residential status comes for about 6 marks, TDS coming for about 4 marks, heads of income coming about 6 marks, the next head coming for about 4 marks, clubbing and set off together coming for 6 marks, and then theory coming for 4 marks. This is what your exam pattern is going to look like. With this, the one strategy which I always tell people, and normally I've seen a lot of students working this out really well in exams, is that when it comes to these kind of things, I always tell people to make sure that you approach the paper properly. The one biggest challenge which I've seen in a lot of students doing DT and IDT together is that they don't end up completing the paper off. Most often students come back to me and tell me that, Rahul, I left off the compulsory question completely in both DT and IDT. So 30 marks is straightforward out. I spent too much time on MCQs because of which I was not able to complete the paper on time, and therefore I had to skip off maybe a 15 mark or a 10 mark question. No, these does not help in exams. Let's be very clear, the direct tax and indirect tax are inherently the lengthiest papers when it comes to CA Inter. After accounts, the next paper which you can really expect a length on is taxation paper, because it takes you that effort to complete the paper after thinking all the processes of. Yes, and therefore a strategy which I always tell students to follow in exams is that when it comes to direct tax, at least specifically, in direct tax, I always tell that priority number 1 is always to solve question number 4. Yes, pick up question number 4 because this normally is assumed to be one of the easier questions. You have clubbing, you have set off fairly easy chapters, and then you have a theoretical topic. If you've paid attention, there are about 6 to 7 theory questions which come from exam, and therefore those theory plus your clubbing set off should be the first question you should be attempting. It's a straightforward giveaway 10-mark questions in your exam, and you should be able to complete it as quick as possible. This then brings you to question number 2. The second question should be your choice of either question number 2 or question number 3, depending on what you think you are more comfortable answering of. Yes. Now, sometimes it happens that question number 2 has TDS, which you don't know the answer to. So you pick up question number 3. It may sometimes happen that in question number 3, maybe subdivision A or subdivision B looks a little more lengthier for you to practice. In which case, you may come to question number 2 and probably ignore of TDS also. You never know. Yes. So that is the choice which you will make between question number 2 and 3. At this stage, I always request students to finish off your MCQs then. Yes, so which means after you complete a question number 4, you complete a 2 and 3, you then move on to MCQs. You start quickly solving your MCQs off, because now you're talking about 15 marks in the most least amount of time. When you're already at the nick of the time, people, when you just have 1 hour left for you, when you look into MCQs, you will pay less attention to details and you'll pay more attention to completing the paper faster. That actually helps a lot. I don't deny the fact that MCQs can go tricky, but sometimes overthinking also becomes a big strain issue, because of which students end up losing a lot of time and patience. So having just 1 hour in your hand, it gives you an opportunity for you to think less, at the same time implement it more. Answers start coming up a little faster. You are more mindful of the timing, and therefore you'll do it a little better. After you're done with all this is when you come back to question number 1. So question number 1 is your last resort. I don't deny it, people. It's a 15-mark question, no doubts about it. But let me be very, very honest to you. Looking at May 25, looking at Jan 25, looking at September 24, it has been very clearly made by ICAI that there will at least be 2 to 3 adjustments in the question, which you will go for a toss. You will look at the adjustment and you will have a doubt to yourself as to what exactly am I looking at. Yes, those kind of adjustments really take up a lot of time and effort out of you. And therefore, it is inherently clear that a student can never get the complete 15 marks in question number 1. By you doing one mistake in the total income question, tax rate is already going to be bad. When the tax rate is bad, step marks are anyway going to be lost. So which means it is always assumed that question number 1 is not the question where you're going to go score 15 marks. Spending too much time in that question in the hope that you'll get 15 marks always ends up in a, I don't know how to put it sweetly to you, but probably ends up always in, let's say, irritating you. Yes, so you should never look at question number 1 to be your top priority question. In fact, for me, if you come and ask me, this is always a last priority. Now, you can follow the same strategy for IDT as well, people. The strategy works in the similar fashion. In IDT also, question number 4 is going to be a theoretical question about registrations and stuff, and therefore it should be fairly easy to solve. 2, 3 is going to be relating to ITC, block credits and everything, and therefore it should be easy to solve. Then you'll have MCQs coming in, where MCQs will have case study and normals, and then you'll come back to question number 1, because in IDT also question number 1 is going to be this lengthy question about output tax liability, input tax liability and everything. I always recommend this as an exercise, people, but yes, at the end of the day, it's your choice. Feel free to do whatever makes comfortable to you, but yes, please keep the strategy in mind in case you're not able to complete a paper off. Probably doing it in this way may help you complete a paper a little faster also. Yes, so this is something which I would always like to recommend to you. With this understanding clear, let's now try to understand as to what are the topics which you should be paying attention to. Now, I have categorized my topics into A, B and C category, not because of the weightage, people, but because of the time and efforts you're going to spend on each topic. My ABC analysis is going to be a little different as compared to other faculties, because other faculties would always come and tell you that TDS and TCS is one of the most important topics and should be in category A. I don't deny it. They are right. Because TDS and TCS mandatorily carries 4 marks when it comes to your written paper and 2 marks when it comes to MCQs, it does pack a lot of weightage. But it's also true to the fact that when it comes to a chapter like TDS and TCS, the efforts which you're going to put in vis-a-vis the marks you're going to get out of it really don't make sense, right? And therefore, for me, TDS, TCS sits in category C. By this logic, you would have now understood what I'm trying to achieve. My achieving at this point of time is to come and ensure that you're able to complete the maximum amount of syllabus which carries the maximum amount of weightage in the least amount of efforts. That is what we're focusing on here, and that is what we're going to look into forward. Yes, great. So with that understanding, we're going to start with category number A, the chapters which you mandatory have to do. You cannot let go of these chapters because it carries a lot of marks. First, very obvious, you're going to look at the tax rates, because tax rates are going to be part of your MCQ question. At the same time, it's also going to be part of your compulsory question. So tax rates are going to be something which you're going to pay extra attention on, especially this time on the tax rates relating to DTR. Yes, DTR has an amendment in DTR. You have DTR amendments in tax rates, and therefore that becomes important. Marginal rebate is a concept which I personally think has not been tested for quite a few attempts. Although it became an amendment in the last year, ICAI has been failing out to test this question in the current years, and therefore my expectation on marginal rebate is extremely high. I expect this to be a part of the syllabus this time, so please pay extra attention on marginal rebate. The next and the most critical thing, I'm sure everyone is aware about it, your attempt carries a lot of changes when it comes to capital gains, and therefore CG tax rates is something you have to pay attention to when it comes to your exam perspective. In your chapter number 2 comes in residential status and scope of total income, which I personally come and tell should never be skipped off. Question number 2, part number A should be one question which you should always keep as a backup for yourself. If question number 3 is something which takes a lot of time or you don't know the answer to, question number 2A is going to come to your rescue. Even if you don't know what TDS looks like, people, it's completely fine. Scoring 6 marks in residential status is easy, and it's definitely a question you should be attempting for. You should not be skipping on that topic, and therefore RS and scope of total income becomes extremely important. There is nothing which I can tell you is not important in the chapter. It's fairly a chapter which hardly is going to take you 30 minutes also if you watch the marathon properly, right? And therefore that chapter is something you should be paying attention to. Coming to salaries, I think salaries got tested this time in question number 3A. So my expectation on salaries being tested very significantly in September attempt is a little remote. But nevertheless, when it comes to salaries, two things which I always want people to pay attention to is, one is the standard deduction which has come in the current year for DTR, because the rates have increased to 75,000. At the same time, the amendment relating to RFA. Now this is something which was amended last year, but has still date not been tested. May 25 was not the attempt where they tested RFA, and therefore I expect RFA to be a part of September attempt for the minimum. The amendment which I'm talking about of last year, people, where it says that when you have to compute RFA for the current year, you will compute RFA for the current year as if RFA is 10% of salary, but at the same time you will compare the RFA of the last year and do inflation benefits, check whichever is lower. Yes, so it is RFA of last year inflated to current year vis-a-vis the salary of the current year, whichever is lower. That is what the RFA computation is. So that is something to be tested in exam. Pay attention to that. Coming to PGBP, if you honestly come and ask me, I would say PGBP inherently itself is an important chapter. There is nothing of a PGBP which I would tell you is to be ignored of, and therefore I would suggest PGBP to be looked at in its entirety. Especially when we already have a cheat sheet, people, where in just a matter of 1.5 slides we'll be done with the whole PGBP. I strongly suggest PGBP paying extra attention to compulsory question for you. Yes, so definitely a very important chapter to go through, but nevertheless some things which I think should be properly read before you go for your exams so that you can score that adjustment marks is one thing on your book profit, which relates to partners and the partner related payments. The two things which are there, that when it comes to book profit, the amendment of the current year says first 6 lakhs you will be taxable for you will be eligible to give a salary of 3 lakh rupees, and for the balance you will be eligible to give a salary of 60%, whichever is lower. Yes, that is what you're going to take into consideration. When it comes to interest on capital, you're going to allow up to 12% of the partner's capital plus loan account. Yes, so that is what is to computation. Second, on the interest on loan capitalization. Yes, the borrowing cost standard which comes and clarifies that when you have a loan taken for a capital asset, interest which is coming on the asset should be capitalized until the asset is put to use. Third, and the most important thing which has not been tested since the 2 attempts is something I expect in the current year on the employers and employees PF contributions. The fact that when it comes to employees contribution, you can pay up to the due date of return filing, versus when you talk about employees contribution, which you have to pay mandatory by the due date of the PF Act itself. Very important. Next, you have your common things which keep tested in every exam, people. Cash payments more than 10,000 rupees, transport of 35,000 rupees, related party transactions happening for unreasonable sums, and then penalties which are coming in to be disallowed when it comes to section 37. One thing which I probably missed out and I want to introduce is something called as TDS disallowance as well, people. TDS disallowance was not part of the May attempt, and therefore I expect it to be a part of September attempt for the bare minimum. TDS disallowance being 100% if it's a non-resident payment and 30% in case it's a resident payment. Yes, good. Coming to CG, now this is something which worked when I gave the strategy last time in May as well, because you got a solid 6-mark question when it comes to your MCQs. Yes, but this time I expect that to be a part of question number 3B. So CG, yes, Important thing on the immobile property. Very commonly tested immobile property thing could be part of question number 3b here. 3b coming and clarifying what are the adjustments you need to keep in mind. Section 47 where transactions are not regarded as transfer when you give an immobile property as gift. Section 50C, which comes and talks about how do you compute a full value of consideration when stamp duty value is higher than full value of consideration. Cost of acquisition to be taken before 2001 or after 2001. Cost of improvement to be ignored before 2001. Section 54, when you sell in house property and invest in house property. 54F, when you sell something else and invest in a house property. 54EC, when you sell something else as an immobile property and buy bonds. Any kind of advance forfeiture before 2014 to be part of capital gains and after 2014 to go part of IFOS. Indexation benefits to be considered when you are doing it before 23rd July, to be ignored when you're doing after 23rd July. But if you're going to be an individual who's going to sell an immobile property, then you will be checking 20% without indexation, 12.5 with indexation, whichever is lower. And then the final fact is something which people always end up missing out in exams, is the fact that when it comes to basic exemption limit, you need to ensure that a basic exemption limit, if it is not utilized by your slab incomes, should be adjusted against your capital gains. Yes, so that is something to be kept in mind. These are some very important things which you should be paying attention to when it comes to your capital gains topic, people. You cannot be letting go of this. Yes, the next thing which I feel is something which can be tested in exam based on my experience of what happened in RTP is something for the amendment of the current year. As you all are aware, before 23rd July and after 23rd July, indexation benefits have been denied to you. But at the same time, there are some assets on which indexation is not applicable even before 23rd July. Yes, so questions relating to those, topics about bonds, topics about depreciable assets, all those kind of cases where before 23rd July also indexations are not available can be a solid question which can be tested in exam. But beyond anything, my personal experience, I feel this time slump sale is on the line. Yes, ICAS pattern has been very simple, that one attempt will be slump sale and one attempt will be immobile property. Since immobile property was already tested as a part of the MCQs, slump sale gets its chances heightened in the current year. Slump sale, easy chapter, nothing great about it. So yes, paid attention to, very importantly, slump sale should be tested for exam and therefore you should pay attention to that chapter. Focus on it. Then comes your clubbing and set off, no doubts about it. This is something which I always tell people have to remember and cannot let go. Leaving this chapter for your income tax is a crime, because it's an easiest chapter which I've ever seen, but at the same time carries 6 marks, power packed 6 marks for your exams, and therefore clubbing and set off mandatorily should be done. No topic should be skipped off. Everything is important. Minor child, family, relatives, giving salary to spouse, getting gifts from spouse, all things to be considered no matter what it is. And therefore clubbing and set off, please look at it very importantly. Next comes your chapter 6A. In chapter 6A, what I always tell is chapter 6A has certain sections which I ask people to pay extra attention to. Section on ATC, which talks about a limit of 1,50,000, CCD, which talks about NPS contribution, D talks about health insurance, E talks about interest on education loan, G talks about your donations, ETJJA specifically for both the regimes, which talks about getting employment opportunities, paying salary to them at the rate of 30%, TTA talking about an interest on savings account, TTB talking about interest on any deposits done by a senior citizen. 3 important topics which I am marking off for your exams in the current year, and I want this to be extra paid attention to, is the section on ATEE, ATEA. ATEE and AA. Now, normally people, I would always say that these sections are no more critical because technically the loan periods have been exhausted, but May 2025 was a lesson. ICAI ended up giving a horrible question in the case study scenario, such a way that after they gave the question, they realized that they had given so many different variations and combinations that they had to come out in the case study, suggested answers and come and clarify that none of the options were correct. Every student literally got 6 marks grace in May 2025 because they played with this adjustment and made a horrible mistake on it. And therefore, ICAI would like to correct their mistakes in the September attempt is what my gut feeling is. Therefore, ATEE and AA should be read along with the HP rules. Basically, the point that people, when it comes to interest on loan when you're taken on a house property, first priority goes to HP, second priority goes to EE or AA depending on 1,50,000 and 50,000. Whatever left off is to be used off for your set off of losses up to 2 lakhs, and then if at all something is pending, you can take it forward. You can take it forward as an HP loss. Yes, this is something which is getting tested multiple times, so yes, pay attention to it. HP. Now, this is something in my May attempt was sitting in category B, but this time I'm introducing it in category A. For the last 3-4 attempts, I'm noticing that ICAI is paying too much attention to HP because HP are now getting really good questions. Questions where ICAI is giving you a format which says that, you know what, you have a house property, but a part of the property is used for house, a part is used for let out, a part of the property is used for business, a part is used for other reasons. These kind of combination questions are getting tested very often right now, especially as a part of the compulsory question. And therefore, I want every single person to go through HP very seriously this time, especially focusing attention on all those cases where you can split the rent into multiple areas. Rent going to HP, rent going to PGBP, rent going to HP, rent going to IFOS, rent going to HP SOP and HP LOP. All those kind of combination questions are getting very famously tested in the current attempt, and therefore I want everyone to pay attention to that adjustment very carefully. Next is the amendment of the current year. Now, this was something which was tested as a part of the MCQs which RTP released, but has not been tested in the exam per se. So I expect this to be a part of the September attempt as well. A very, very minute adjustment can be given in the exam where ICI can come and say that there is a person who is a real estate agent and is in the business of letting out residential houses. What will be his income taxable under? If you write it as PGBP, you are screwed. This year's amendment comes and clarifies that when a person is going to have a let out residential property, it will always be taxable under HP, whether he runs it as his business or he runs it as his commercial reason. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's always going to go under HP. So that is the amendment to be kept in mind. Yes. So category A, these are all the topics. What are the topics, people? We're looking at tax rates, residence status, salaries, PGBP, CG, clubbing set off, chapter 6A and HP. Yes. This moves me to category number B. Now, category number B are all those topics which I think are important, but at the same time is going to be very, very easy for you to finish off. Yes. So category number B will be paid less attention to because it will take least amount of efforts to complete off, but at the same time is going to carry a good amount of marks if it gets tested in exam. It generally does not get tested in exam, but may get tested in exam. Therefore, we're paying attention to it. First is your IFRS topic, because in IFRS topic, there are three critical things I always pay attention to. One is the amendment of the current year, which is the buyback dividends. Now, buyback dividends has been part of the ICI CA final attempt for the current year. They've already tested it in MCQs for CA final, and therefore the chances of it getting tested in CA inter becomes even more higher. Yes, May 2025 did not get a testing question on buyback dividends, and therefore September 25 takes a huge chance to get the buyback dividends getting tested in exam. So yes, buyback dividend will be paid extra attention to. Apart from buyback dividend, the two things which always get tested in exam in most of the cases when it comes to a part of a compulsory question also is something called 222E. The fact that when it comes to your private companies, if they give a loans and advances to the shareholder holding more than 10%, it is taxable as deemed dividend. Second, whenever it talks about any kind of dividend being taxed in your hands, the interest which is going to come on the dividend will be allowed up to a maximum of 20% of the dividend income. Yes, a silent adjustment for your exam, and therefore these two things to be kept in mind. The theory question, which I personally marked as category number B, people, because this is going to be part of your question number 4B. Yes, question number 4B is going to have a question relating to this, and therefore this is something which I always think should be tested off. Yes, you should never skip off a question of 4A because clubbing and set off is going to be part of it. 4B because it's going to be theory. Now, ICI only has a handful of theory when it comes to inter-syllabus, and therefore there is no reason for you to skip these topics off. The handful of theories are already marked on the screen. First question is about when is the case when previous year and assessment year will be the same. Chapter number 1, basics, 5 cases. Question number 2, the complete return filing chapter. Who should file return? When should you file return? What happens if you file the return late? What happens if you make mistakes in the return? What happens if the return has some errors and you want to file a defective notice? What happens in case you have to get a PAN and Aadhaar linking? All those kind of questions. Very easy chapter, people. Hardly takes about 15 to 20 minutes to go through, and therefore return filing chapter easily can get you a 4 mark in exam. Then comes your advanced tax. This is something which has not been tested in exams multiple times, but nevertheless, once in a while it always comes. It's a very simple 4 slab, 15, 45, 75, 100. So if you remember that, you can clear the exam off very easily. And then comes to 201 interest. Now this is one question, standalone question, a very small 2-liner question, people, which can probably carry about 2 marks, not more than 2 marks definitely, but can be part of your MCQs, right? So 2 marks there, or 2 marks can become as a part of a descriptive questions. So this is something which you can look into. Now 201 money, there is only one question which is there for every exam, and therefore it is there in this, it is there in your study material as well. So if you can go through your study material and pick up this 201, just understand what is happening in that question, probably mug up that question and go 99% the same question gets repeated, if at all it gets repeated. Yes, so you can look at that question as it is. That brings me to category number C. The chapters which I think are important, but at the same time I always come and tell to give less weightage to it. Yes, these chapters I have no doubts are important for exam. They do carry marks, but it comes once in a while. When it comes to the other 3, like agricultural income, 10AA and EMT. Agricultural income was a part of Jan 25, has not been tested in May 25, so I don't expect it in September as well. 10AA and EMT have lost its intention after DTR has come in with a full swing, and therefore my likelihood that 10AA and EMT will come is very, very remote. At the same time, TDS, while it is an important chapter, there is no doubt that it's going to take a lot of time for you to complete. If you're going to spend too much time on TDS, it's going to take away time out of you, and therefore I don't recommend doing that as well. But nevertheless, if you want to go through TDS, there are some topics which I have marked off, which I think you should be focusing on. First is your 194IA, the amendment of the current year, which comes and clarifies that under 194IA, when you're going to sell a house property, you need to ensure that the sale value of the complete house property is considered for the purpose of checking the limit of 50 lakhs and not individual owner. Next, your LRS TCS, because this was something which was tested in the current year as well. It was tested in the May 2025 as well. Yes, the question relating to the fact that when you're going to send money outside India, how should you be collecting TCS was a part of your MCQ questions, and therefore expectation on this coming as a part of the descriptive this time becomes higher. Next, section 194J, which talks about professional payments, 194I, which talks about rent payments, A talking about interest, 194B talking about winnings, and then 206AB. I have a particular intention of 206AB people because September and the Jan is the only attempts 206AB is a part of the syllabus. From next year, 206AB has been scrapped off, and therefore I expect 206AB to be part of either September and Jan. So whichever gets it is the answer. Yes, so I look forward to that being as part of the question as well. If you get these questions, if you get these topics, figure it out in the exams. If not, it's completely fine. I still tell TDS and TCS is a 4-mark chapter which is worth leaving, because at the end of the day, if it's going to take that much time during your preparations, it definitely does not make sense to you. Yes, good. This is your ABC analysis on how you should be approaching your chapters, people. At the same time, the top comes and tells you on how you should be approaching your question paper as well. My only one request before I close this video is for you all to take it positively. I know papers have not been easy. Jan 25, May 25 have been good reasons for people to come and tell the tax paper was difficult, especially when the certified copies this time came out and GST was not corrected appropriately. There was a lot of human ruckus when it comes to these two papers, and yes, I will not deny the fact. It comes to tax, it becomes a difficult paper because at the same time, it's not just about you people. Sometimes ICAI ends up making horrible mistakes when it comes to the chapters, and therefore, the more time you end up spending on each question, the more you lose marks. It also develops your anxiety, and therefore that causes a lot of problem. So there is this one small request which I'm going to make, not something which I always do, but I'm going to make it very openly on YouTube itself, is that if you go and approach a question during exam stages, if you go and approach a question and if you feel like that question is something you're not aware about, it feels like there is a question which you don't know what the right answer is. Sometimes it looks like, yes, you know what, no matter what I'm trying, I'm not able to get the right answer. For tax, very specifically, let it go. When I say let it go, do not leave the question as it is. My request is do anything you wish for. Yes, 99% what I've realized is questions like MCQs where things can go horribly wrong, any option taking gives you the full mark. That is what ICAI has been doing right now. At the same time, when it comes to descriptive, if you have written your appropriate notes and assumptions properly, ICAI takes that into cognizance and does give you marks for it, right? So my small request when it comes to examinations this time, people, is that when you look into the question and if you feel like you don't know how to approach the question, try whatever you feel like. Yes, sometimes your first gut is always the right answer. Even if it's not, maybe the question is wrong and you may end up scoring marks. Rather than sitting and spending time on one question for 30-40 minutes just to figure out what is happening, you end up losing marks in other places where you could have scored more potential marks, right? And therefore, my small request is, if you see a question, attempt it in the next 5 minutes. If you get the answer, proceed forward with it. If you don't get the answer, it's okay. Write anything and come, and you should be able to cover it off. Yes, clearing of the paper is important as much as completing the paper is. And therefore, I want you to look into these two things very, very importantly when it comes to the exams. That is all, people. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. We are exactly at 30 minutes. So thank you for spending your 30 minutes along with me. I know this preparation strategy, the preparation time has been going really tedious for you, but at the same time, personally, I would like to tell you, I feel very proud of all of you who are going through this difficult times. It is not an easy joke to sit at home and prepare on a book, people, but the efforts which you're going to take right now is going to be the one reason where you're going to clear in the future. So yes, next 1 month, hustle up a little bit, sacrifice a few things here and there, but at the same time, enjoy what you're doing, because at the end of the day, you took this course with an intention to do well for yourself, right? So please enjoy what you're doing right now, but at the same time, don't overburden yourself. Don't be too lethargic also. It's a mix of everything. Yes. So work-life balance is extremely important, which is what I always tell people. That's all I would like to tell in today's video. We will be coming back very, very soon during your exam days with some short videos so that you can prepare for your exams very nicely. But until then, please continue your preparations and always feel free to reach out to me if you have any doubts. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.